Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome to Navigating Adult Autism. We're a bunch of moms with a lot of perspectives, a lot of experience, and a lot of opinions. We are discussing epilepsy and autism. Epilepsy and autism spectrum disorder are both neurodevelopmental conditions that can co-occur. The prevalence of epilepsy in individuals with ASD is estimated to be between 10 and 40%. Conversely, the prevalence of ASD in individuals with epilepsy is around 6%. It kind of mentions here in my notes that the exact causes of both ASD and epilepsy are not fully understood, but genetic factors are believed to play a role. Some genetic mutations can increase the risk of developing both conditions. So, what is the DSM-5 definition of epilepsy? Epilepsy is a chronic disorder of the brain that causes a tendency to have recurrent seizures. 2 or more seizures must occur before a person can receive the diagnosis of epilepsy. So we have a few parents here tonight that their children do have seizures and epilepsy and autism. And so we're going to talk to them and we're going to ask them, when did your journey start with this dual diagnosis? Elizabeth or Heather or Elizabeth?
Cynthia, I think. Are we fighting about who's going to talk?
Who's going to talk about the dual diagnosis?
Okay, I'll do it. So this is Elizabeth. And so both of my sons do have epilepsy as well as their autism diagnosis. But they have different types of epilepsy. So really our journey started a long time ago. Chase is 19, but when he was born, first 6 weeks were kind of just typical. He was a little jaundiced, so we had to go in and do blood work. We didn't even have to do the lights. And but at 6 weeks, he started crying and he didn't stop. I could see him as he cried. It was his arm would shake. And then his right arm would shake, then his right leg would shake, and then it would go to the left leg and up to the other left arm. And it was almost like it was following a circuit. And I went in and we're taught, I talked to the doctor and, this is going on. So first it was, well, he's got colic. Mm-hmm. He's got colic. So, okay. So, and he's, we spent most of the time in a rocking chair, just rocking back and forth really hard. But it kept going and he kept getting older. Then it was, well, he's teething and he's getting ear infections. And then it kept going. And, we're in our 2s now. And then it was, well, no, it's night terrors. And so, we're hitting almost 3. And I keep going in. Something's not right. Something is wrong here. And at that time, we had in those between right after he was 1, we had moved and we had a new doctor and he, was monitoring this. And so right before he turned 3, we started doing, the EEGs and that type of stuff. And his information was sent to one of our local neurologists. I never actually got the pleasure of meeting the neurologist that many of you around this table have met. My pediatrician.
Lucky duck.
Yeah. He kind of protected me or protected the doctor. I don't know which. So we started to get more seizure related diagnosis. And I was told, well, it's this one and it's this one and he'll have this, but there's no treatment. So you just need to wait till he outgrows it when he's in his preteens. And I'm like, okay, at this point, he's not sleeping for more than 30 minutes at a time. I'm talking all night long. So he's not sleeping. We're not sleeping. Poor child just looks, just looks awful. And, bags under his eyes. He's not even 3. And so, so our doctor, the pediatrician, decided to send us up to Columbia to Dr. Patel. And Dr. Patel, he didn't do any other tests, nothing. He looked at the video we had taken of our son and looked at the tests. And he sat us down and told us, yes, your son does have epilepsy. He has complex partial epilepsy. So those are going to be focal. So it's the staring. So it wasn't as obvious. Although now we know, because it was getting so bad to the point, we just thought he was screaming and struggling. His legs and arms were going stiff. But we just thought he was just really, really mad, but we were learning that, we learned that those were starting to turn from those focal or those partial seizures to full grand mal. Dr. Patel sat us down and we were, I said, you know what this means? It means it's time to start medication. And we just, we were so fixated on getting the answers. We hadn't really processed or thought about medication. And that was hard because, the anti-seizure medications are not like given a Tylenol. They're pretty serious.
They are.
And so he sat and he knew we were struggling, and he told us, he said, you're doing all this stuff. He's in first steps. You're doing ABA. I'm reading all these reports. He's not progressing. And at that time, he had ABA first steps came in, and every time they would report, Ginger would report to us, and she would say, he's more compliant. He's building a relationship, but he's not retaining anything because he's never sleeping, is what Dr. Patel said. He's never sleeping. Nothing goes into long-term storage.
And I had heard that before too, about or if they're having the seizures that you don't know, you're not aware. Like you said, they're not super obvious to a teacher or whoever's with them. And that's what I had heard mentioned before. Like they forget, and you're like relearning things constantly.
Yeah.
Because they can't,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he said, if you want him to learn all this work you're putting in, if you want it to mean something or make a difference, you're going to have to get the seizures under control. And if you don't, they're going to end up being stronger and stronger. He's already not sleeping. He's already showing signs of the seizures getting stronger. And so we agreed, and we went home, and, that next day, however long it took us to get the medication, I gave him his medication, that first dose. He went to bed that night, and I woke up at 2 a.m, and I was terrified. He had never slept more than a half hour.
Your routine was off because he was sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I killed my son. I thought he's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone. I was so scared, and I just lied there for a few seconds. Finally, I rolled out of bed and I crawled to his room. I was so weak and I was so afraid.
So ready.
I couldn't make my body face that he might be gone. I was just so afraid. And I got to his bedroom was just right next to the master. And I got to the threshold and I heard, and I just collapsed. And I'm crying and I'm happy, and the relief, and I was scared, and it was just, it was the most beautiful thing. I had never heard him sleep. Of course, a few years later, we had to remove his adenoids.
Yeah.
That was part of the noise. But I was just
relieved.
I was so relieved. And so that's how his journey started. And then with Nathan, who's 3
Before
years
you
older,
go to Nathan, how's Chase doing now?
Great question. So Chase, he was released. He was 2 years seizure free. By the time he was 12 years old, he was. We got the word and started taking him off medication in November. In December, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So we kind of went from one to the other. But yeah, he is seizure free. And just for our audience to know, once you've had epilepsy, even though he no longer has seizures that we know of, he's still considered as having epilepsy. So, when you do your medical reports and you do these type of things, because there's always that chance that he's going to.
So you want to include it. Yeah. When you're filling stuff out.
So yeah, it's really important.
Completely off his seizure med?
Yep. We were able to wean him off, slow process.
Right.
but we were able to wean him off because you don't want to do it too fast.
Right.
But we were able to successfully wean him off. But yeah, so that was a good.
Glad he's
That was a
doing
good
well
time.
on that part.
Yeah. It really is. And it was a journey because it wasn't like we just get on meds and everything's okay.
Mhm.
He was on Triliptol, and that is a very touchy medication. You have to treat it right. You have to shake it right. You have to make sure the pharmacy's shaking it and not giving you old medication.
Oh.
It's only once it's open, it's only good 6 weeks. And we went through pharmacy to pharmacy because we'd go get a refill and he'd start having seizures again. And then we were finding out our medication. So it's really important to if you're having medication, make sure. I have a little background in pharmacy. I used to work as a pharmacy tech. So I knew some things that were going on. And I'm like, the liquid consistency is different. And all of a sudden we got this new bottle and he's starting to have seizures again. So it's really important to make sure that type of thing, that you're dispersing it correctly, that you're getting a good refill, because we really struggle with that. And that was really unfortunate that we had to go, and it shouldn't have been.
Don't you think that, because for Zachary, the first medicine they tried, he had a seizure the same week. I don't know, within the week that we tried his first one. And his personality totally changed. And it was like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we can't do this. But I felt like, as a parent and anybody listening, just that like, well, the doctor prescribed this, so this is what we have to, but then when I called and he had the seizure in between the first and the second, like they were willing to try something else. Cause I said, his whole personality it's gone. And he looks mad. Like he literally looked like he was pissed.
Wow.
And Zachary's pretty smiley. So I thought, well, if this is going to change his whole entire personality, how are we going to do this forever? And so that would be just something that you don't always feel it. Cause working in healthcare for so many years, I understand that you're supposed to advocate for yourself. It's not the idea that doctors know best and you don't know anything and whatever. That's not true. So I would just say to any parents that once you get to the point where you're giving medication, that you're the one seeing that child every day, and just making sure that you're advocating if you think something else needs to be, you need to be trying something new.
Right.
Well, I think that really fits in our kind of our experience, because I had heard some of those things and I knew about side effects, and the parents before me taught me, and that's why I fought for this medication, because he didn't seem to have any side effects. And so we fought for it instead of giving up and it's not working. We fought for it because I knew that's, the other ones out there might have side effects, that wouldn't fit with him. So yeah. So that's kind of his. I mean, it was a long journey, and as we chat, we'll give you some more ins and outs. But Nathan, he was quite a bit older. So he's 22 now, and he had his first seizure at the beginning of 2020. So he's got a lot of complications and different things. So he'd been kind of monitored. He'd already done like a 3-day EEG. There, was a stroke early on. And so they've always done MRIs and watched him, but never caught any seizure activity, never suspected any really, except maybe to explain why he wasn't sleeping. I think that's why, why we kind of looked at that.
And how did you feel, Elizabeth, when that happened again, another diagnosis like that with your, that weighs, it's got to weigh on you at some point.
Yeah.
Did you think, oh, yeah, here we go again? Or did you take it okay because you're more experienced now?
I think because it was so hard and it was such a different experience, didn't have time to think about that part, because when he started his first seizure, we didn't really have any warning. He had been sick, and had some high fevers. 10 days later, his sister was with him. He was putting on tennis shoes to go to the zoo. It was kind of a unseasonably warm day for the wintertime, and I was at work, and he made the sound. If anybody knows that sound, when the breath is being pushed out of the diaphragm, you don't forget it, do you, Cynthia?
You don't forget it.
And And this daughter that was with him, she's always had a fear because Nathan has some medical, issues and had a rough start. She's always afraid that we would lose him on her watch. Right. So here she is. He's putting his shoes on. He does this. How would you describe it, Cynthia?
Is it guttural?
It's like a death sound.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
guttural. It is very guttural.
Yeah.
But he turned and went down. And since then we learned the first ones for seizures are usually the worst. And she had no idea. He's foaming in the mouth. He's jerking all over the place. It's a full grand mal. She's giving him CPR because she has no idea, no idea what's going on. And her another daughter was there. So Sam ran in and she's like, wait, I think it's a seizure. She had read because of her, she remembers a character that had seizures. And she goes, get him on his side.
Okay.
And so, so they got him on the side. By the time I got home, of course, they'd already called 911. There were 7 emergency vehicles in our front yard. So, he went, they took him in. They did all the testing that they needed to do. And then they had to, of course, anytime they do CPR on something like that, he had to have the x-rays, make sure he didn't get any cracked ribs or anything like that. So it was terrifying.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I don't think and it was so different. I think later on we certain members of our family, it was really hard on my husband.
I bet.
We went through this with Chase. Why Nathan, and why, he's a 18, 19, however old he was, 22 minus 5.
Exactly.
So he definitely had that why. And it's been a long, hard journey with him because at first they weren't real frequent. So we didn't do medication. We did rescue meds. And I know we'll talk about that, what a rescue med is. And then they started to increase and he had fallen and got a big injury. And then we just kind of made that decision. And then we went on meds and it increased them. And so there's a lot to that piece of the journey. But that's how we started. And it was hard. And he was going from... He was going from pediatrics to adults. So that's a whole nother
that's another
thing.
transition.
We'll chat about after everyone else has a chance to share their first part of their journey.
Cynthia, how'd your journey start with Eric and seizures?
It started when he was about 6. But we had history in our family of his seizure, but we didn't ever talk about it. Eric's dad's brother had seizures when he was younger in junior high. And he was on medication, and then he'd quit taking his medication as he got older, and then he had to go back on it. But nobody really talked to us about it. And then Eric's dad had just had a first grand mal seizure in our vehicle coming back from Colorado that year that Eric had his first seizure.
Wow.
So, and his was a grand mal seizure, Kevin's was, and we were all 3 right in his car together, and it was very traumatic, because Eric and I, we thought he was dying.
Sure.
He shook all over, and then he finally ended up just all the breath was taken out of him, and then he had blood coming out of his mouth, and we thought he was gone, but that was from him biting his tongue.
Oh my goodness.
So we didn't know. And then we pulled into a truck stop, and that's where the husband and wife team came over, and they said, he's had a seizure. And we're going, what? And so then I just ran in and called 911, and they came and got Kevin, and they saw a very healthy 40-year-old man. Or 50-year-old man that was didn't no weight problems. He was athletic, and he just had a random seizure. So they think what he'd done is he rolled his ankle, and so he had a blood clot. We don't know because he did end up having a blood clot in a leg.
Okay.
So anyway, but he survived it obviously, and then Kevin's only had 1 grand mal seizure.
What do they call that when you have one?
What do they call it?
Yeah. You get a free, they say it's your free seizure.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, your free seizure.
And that's why they don't diagnose you at that point. Because they're waiting for it's a horrible game to play.
It is.
After you've had someone have one, and then you're like, okay.
There's
and the
a free
doctor's like,
seizure.
well, we'll see you when you have another one.
Exactly.
It's like, what the heck is going on? Yeah.
And with Kevin, we were lucky because one of our best friends is a doctor here, and he called us and got us into the best doctor in Springfield for adults, which is Dr. Rodney Quinn. So they started.
Are you partial? This is the best doctor in the whole town.
That's right. And his name is Rodney Quinn.
And so he got right in with Rodney, and he was so good. And like Rodney, even though it was his first grand mal, he didn't take him off the seizure meds. He still made him stay on them.
Oh.
Because Kevin drove for a living. He goes, you have a choice to make.
Yeah.
You have a history here. You had this happen in the car. You've had a brother with the history. And then Eric, 2 months later, started a history. He goes, you need to figure out what you're going to do here. And I would suggest you staying on the medication.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Kevin's on medication.
Well, he's off
this
now.
day. He's off now.
Yep. They took Dr. Quinn retired, and then the other doctor that came on staff or into his place took over Kevin's case and thought, you only had a one time, and you're slowing down your driving as far as not driving for a living as often and as far. So if you want to take the chance, we'll wean you off of it. Because he developed a tremor from it that's permanent.
Oh,
The tremor is still
side
there.
effects sometimes. Yeah.
So,
And so Eric is doing well.
Yeah, and he just started. He had a grand mal. He had a petite mal basically that day because the dogs were barking, his cousins were screaming, and I didn't know what he was doing. Just standing by the car and just like, because it didn't even look like Kevin's seizure. So I thought, well, what is this? I didn't know it was a seizure.
He was like slightly shaking.
No, he was just standing there, and his eyes were fluttering, but that was it.
Oh, yeah.
And he was leaned up against the mirror so he didn't fall down. So then I just kind of drug him into the house because he was really stiff. I didn't realize that. And then my sister ran over there, and then she called 911 and, the firemen came and stuff like that. I think we ended up taking him to the hospital definitely that night. And, they tell you don't need to come in with a seizure. They tell you just to stay home. And
Right. That's what Heather was saying.
Okay. So now the rule is if it's 5 minutes, that's what you're right. You're timing it for 5 minutes. I found it very odd. Actually, I saw, and we'll put this on when we air this episode. I've got a great do's and don'ts for seizure that I just saw.
Oh, good.
From a foundation. I can't remember a young man that was on the Disney Channel that died of a seizure. I can't think of his name right now. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Anyway, but that's a good do and don't kind of situation. And it also said, because I thought, what a helpless, you're literally telling me that I'm going to watch my son have this, and then I'm going to call you at 5 minutes. What if, it's going to take you another 10 minutes to get to me? Why would I wait 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. It was so, it didn't feel very compassionate to me. But I know that's what they have on the official instructions of if someone's having a seizure. But I thought on this one, I just recently saw, it also said if there's any other medical reason that you think they need to be called, meaning if something else is going on, which like Zachary hits his head every time. He just falls, he has grandma and hits something almost every time. So we've just been lucky that he hasn't had a head injury. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's a very horrible feeling to think, oh, no, don't call 911. They don't want to help you. Mm-mm. It's
because it looks so horrific. You can't imagine not calling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Eric just kept having more, the older he got, the more seizures he had. And like one school year, he was in PE, and I bet he had probably 13 that whole year at school.
Oh, because it was physically related, you thought, right? You narrowed it down to
kind of physically related.
Okay.
Because during some of his sleep-deprived EEGs, he'd run in place or breathe heavy, and it could even be a video game for the lights and the action.
The intensity probably is.
Because he said when you're like driving through down the road sometime, and you have this trees on one side, and the sun glimmers in and out of the trees, that could even cause a seizure in some people.
I believe that. Yeah.
And so they had to keep adjusting medication. So Eric had his seizure diagnosis before the autism. So then when the autism came in, our seizure doctor was like, he just was like, thought that was crazy,
Oh, did he?
And that's the way we ended up going to Columbia too, because
to the Thompson Center in Columbia.
And he was wonderful there. Very good.
Dr. Patel.
Yes.
Boy, we like Dr. Patel.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet
He needs
Dr.
to be a
Patel.
guest. Yeah.
Is he retired or is he still actively practicing?
I think You know?
Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
think maybe he's in Kansas or living a
Okay.
little bit in Kansas.
Is he?
I was trying to track him down.
I might have to
No,
search
my
for
question.
him.
Sorry. What made you pursue an autism diagnosis
It was the
in addition to epilepsy?
yeah. See, I didn't even think about the epilepsy, and I didn't know the correlation, but I didn't know there was a correlation between autism and epilepsy. It was just his behavior from the time he was like 3 on up, and every time we went to our family birthday party, we couldn't function in the room. We had to be taken out because he'd be screaming and crying because everybody'd be talking and laughing and singing, and he couldn't handle any of that.
Did he have his hands on his ears or anything like that? Yeah, that was my son too.
He was just deemed that he was just misbehaving just at the parties. That's how. And then and it was bad. I had to take him in the other room and shut the door. And so really it was behavioral stuff that finally, and then him, me just knowing there was a lot of stuff going on with him, and meeting a grandma once at like a taekwondo that was raising her grandkids. And I started talking to her, and she goes, "Honey, you need help."
Oh.
And probably that doctor, was that Dr. Patel?
Of course it was. Yeah.
Poor guy. We should maybe. Yeah.
We love him.
He didn't know Eric, right? That young age, right? So that's probably why he said what he did. Because obviously.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't Patel that said that. It was the one in Springfield.
Okay.
Yeah. And he called me a Munchausen mother on the notes that I got.
Oh, that's
what I got down.
what a
the years.
delight.
The Springfield doctor?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, how nice.
And Dr. Patel told me that, and they gave me the paperwork on it. And they even tried
he told you that he read it in the notes, you mean?
Yeah, he read it in the notes that we
You're
got.
anything but that.
Good
Oh
gracious.
my
Horrible.
gosh.
I didn't even know what a
my.
Munchausen mother was. Like, what's a Munchausen mother?
Well, we in Springfield know who that is.
Yes, yeah, we do.
She's on national news right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's another story.
Yeah.
But
So that's why we ended up out of Springfield. Yeah. So
well, that was quite common actually in Springfield
it was.
too.
Mhm.
Well,
So
still
is
is
Eric
actually.
seizure free now?
He is, but they're not taking him off of medication. So I don't know why. I need to see. I'm not as involved in his appointments anymore since he did get to come back to Springfield and go to Dr. Quinn as an adult. And I loved it when he was there. And I always went with him. So did Kevin usually, but he's still on his medication, on the same level of medication too. It's a very high dosage of everything. And he's afraid to go off of it.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree with him. I mean, I feel like if he doesn't have symptoms like your husband was having, right? Like if he doesn't have symptoms of the medication, then it's why have the fear?
Right.
Just stay on the meds if they're working.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know with Chase, I mean, he had to have a clear EEG for 2 years and no reported seizures. And so maybe he's not having any seizures, but if they're seeing anything
Exactly.
on the EEG, they might be like, there's still a little, we want it to be 100%. And that's why it took us, a while, but that's why we did eventually make that,
Right.
the decision. Of course, he wasn't a dad driving around.
Exactly.
So if he started again, it was,
Right.
Yeah.
it's a whole different scenario.
Are there other side effects from the medication that you're worried about?
Not really. I mean, he's kind of it's kind of it's slowed him down completely. But
Like energy level, you mean?
energy level.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know of any other side effects that I would be afraid of right now, because he's on some newer medications, lamotrigine and phenatone, and so I don't know. They don't have the side effects that Kevin had on half of his medicine. He
I didn't
took
know
an old time.
lamotrigine was a seizure medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Cyan takes it for something else, I guess.
For antidepressant, I think, or maybe, I don't know. Lamotrigine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, what were you saying about the emergency meds? You were going to explain what that was. Is that what you called them?
Yeah, yeah. That's if you have those seizures that go over.
5
For
minutes.
ours,
Oh.
we do it at 3.
Yeah.
But unless we can tell it's coming to an end, and Nathan's are almost all 3.
Okay, so
3
you
minutes
take daily
long.
meds, but then there's also
There's
emergency meds.
And
Okay.
so luckily Nathan
Okay, I get that. Okay.
got to the point where the medication had changed. So now it's just a dissolvable tablet that we can stick in the side of his mouth.
Which is nice.
Not many enjoyed that back in the day. So I know
No.
Cynthia had a different experience with emergency meds.
Yeah, because Eric had the suppositories,
Oh, yes.
and that was all they had. And when he flew over to Africa, I was scared about him being on a plane going over the ocean. And what if he had a seizure in the air, and who could get to him and give him that emergency med? So I was on the phone trying to talk to the airline, the flight attendant, the pilot, anybody that would talk to me.
I don't think we want the pilot helping him. It's someone else.
Unless there's a backup pilot.
That's right.
I did end up talking to somebody. It wasn't any of those.
Hi, this is Cynthia. I talked to the pilot on flight 4647.
That's about how I was, though. It was ridiculous. It was crazy. But
Munchausen, Mom.
Listen, you got to do what you got to do, Cynthia.
Yeah.
So I don't blame you. I remember when he went to Africa, I was like, I was worried for him. I remember praying for him. Like,
Yeah.
well,
a big
it was
trip
a
for that.
good
It was
experience
big.
for him, though.
it was
And he did
good.
fine.
Mm-hmm. He did.
Yeah. So what advice would you give young parents? I mean, oh, sorry, Heather. I didn't mean to.
Oh, you're not.
Okay.
You're fine. Oh, I can give some young parents some advice. Right now, I can start with that.
Like,
No,
you recognize it. Like, did you?
Well, I think it's interesting that so Zachary's didn't start till puberty. And when I was researching,
Okay.
like I had no idea that, if he didn't have seizures when he was young, that he could have them. But now I know that the prevalence does increase with somebody on the ASD, spectrum, as they approach puberty and then on to adulthood. So you have a higher rate of that happening. And I had no idea about that. So that'd be something neat for somebody like in the healthcare profession to tell you, just to be looking for,
Right.
Well, yeah, in
Yeah.
our situation, it would have been different. We already had one child
Sure.
with epilepsy. His EEGs were showing there was the potential. Had
Mhm.
we even had that discussion
Right.
with my children, with ourselves, it would have been it wouldn't have been so terrifying.
Right.
I wonder if it was like, it feels like sometimes maybe in the past it's been a taboo kind of just something people don't want to talk about. I don't know why. Because but I will say this, that Zachary has only had grand mal seizures. That's his jam. I think they also refer to them as tonic-clonic as well.
Yeah.
Tonic-clonic.
Tonic-clonic. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little tongue twister there.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, but like I think that the frustration for our little family with this is that we don't know why. There's no why. He's done all the tests like Elizabeth and Cynthia were talking about. And unless they like have a seizure while they're hooked up and all that stuff, it just seems like they're not going to know. I think maybe sleep deprivation may be something, because Zachary is a nocturnal person, maybe. But the other frustrating part too is that, and I don't know if Eric has even spoken to this or not, but I've read that, sometimes there's an aura, almost like a migraine. Like I used to have migraines, and I could tell you if I was going to have a migraine in 20 minutes. And so some people speak about having auras before seizures, but of course, when you don't have a kid that can talk to you, that's not going to help you. But so it was, I think it's horrible. And just being honest, I did not, I'm not going to speak for Michael, because I think his road to acceptance with autism was a little bit different, but I never asked why with autism. I did not ask why. I have many conversations with God where peas in a pod and, he helps me out. I didn't have this like why question until the seizures. And I just thought, what in the world? Why are we needing this complication now?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you start worrying about, because with autism, I feel like the danger aspect would make me nervous about something happening to him, like the danger of running in front of a car or something like that. And, that can be a nerve-wracking thing to worry about all the time. But you have a handle, you can manage control of that stuff, it can be whatever. And with seizures, there's just literally no control of anything. So I find that to be a little bit debilitating. I think when we were talking about like the scary part, it is scary because there's unknown. I can't control it at all. I can't help. I can't take him to therapy. At least I have with autism, I've got things that I can do to make me feel like I'm on the right track. The medicine is really the only thing with the seizures. And I get freaked out every time we go to an annual checkup, because they're like, don't you dare miss, like the last time we went, she said, if he is sick and he's not able to swallow it, because Zachary doesn't do pills. So we had to have it's a liquid that he takes, and no real side effects or anything. And he takes it 3 times a day, and he hasn't had a seizure in a year and a half. So it seems to be going well, but you always wonder if the other foot is like, you're waiting for it to happen
Right.
For the other
every night.
See the fall.
And I can see where you were like, Chase, it's 2 a.m. because we check. I know every parent does this to a certain extent. Like you go in and check on your kid when they're little, like, oh, just checking, you know, we're like checking for breath. I'm trying to like, you know,
As the
because
blankets moving up and down. Yeah. So you can see if they're breathing.
I'm scared. And that, like they say, you know, they can't be alone. Zachary couldn't be alone by himself anyway, but with seizures, especially, they shouldn't be obviously in water by themselves or, you know, Zachary doesn't drive, but I mean, like, I'm thinking about standing up in the shower. If he I'm always thinking about how's he going to hit his head on something. And so,
and he's a man. I mean, he's
a grown man,
tall, and
so I may need some additional counseling for this
or help. And
it's pretty new to us. He had his first seizure in 2016, so it hasn't been like forever, but it's almost or approaching 10 years, so that's plenty of time. But I never knew to even look for it. I think it's that education part. And I think because we don't have doctors that we go to specifically for autism, and like we got diagnosed by a neurologist, and that was the last time we ever saw him. It would be nice and the pediatrician was very gracious, but he didn't know all these, he's not trained in all these, you know, special areas. And so it would just be nice if we had more guidance in the healthcare world. Just to say, you know, be on the lookout for this or this or that. You know what I mean? Because you kind of feel like you're left out in the cold with all of it. I don't have a Dr. Patel. You can tell, can't you?
We need to call Dr. Patel.
And Eric never has any auras before a seizure, so he doesn't.
Okay, and I didn't know if everyone did or not.
Some do, but they always ask you, "Did you have an aura? Do you have any auras?" And he never did.
Okay,
and then he has had seizures in the water. At camp, and he's he was an underwater swimmer staying on the bottom of the pool, so that's what he always did, was stay on the bottom.
Oh my God!
So it was a while before they got him pulled up.
Couldn't even see him. Yeah.
So and I had left camp and I was on my way back to Springfield from Kansas. So
I remember that when you got
that call. So I got turned around and.
Yes, the fear. I mean, Heather, you brought the fear part. I mean, Cynthia, you lived that. We lived that. Nathan had one of those falls where he, you know, and his sister was right there, but you know, she's 4'9". I mean,
you can't help. I mean, there's no way.
A couple inches taller than her, and his head went back and hit the bookshelf, sliced it open, and you know, were staples in his head. I mean, blood everywhere because he's not knowing to hold still. I know I've told this story. You'll have to go back and listen to that podcast about the Lego. You know, we've got these grown firemen looking for the Lego arm in our house while he's bleeding because he's more concerned with where his Lego went flying.
Because it goes back to that danger awareness.
Yeah.
I mean,
and until recently, you know, the fear, you know how when your heart race is just beating and you just take a deep breath, you got to relax. I couldn't do that. I couldn't, I would take these deep breaths and my heart rate wouldn't go down because the fear, you have to be there. And he, you know, whether it's stairs, and he had one morning, his aide had come and I said, he's ready. He's acting like it. He's ready. You've got to watch him. And 3 steps up, I hear a seizure, you know, and he had been there. But usually he doesn't follow him because it's a short flight. It's just up to like a room over the garage where his sister lives in. And he would stay at the bottom, but he stayed with them. I was able to, you know. So it's just, I mean, the fear is just overwhelming. But how did I get my fear down? We do have a medical alert dog. So we have a seizure dog.
Yes, that is.
Now, Bo.
And that's great.
And, you know, does it solve everything? We're still working at it because it's a process. We've got a podcast on service dogs and all the work that goes into that. And you'll have to listen to that. But knowing that he's there, he's training, he's really good at when we practice visuals. If somebody will practice, because we have to practice with different people in different locations. If someone spins and falls and starts to shake, he's barking. When Nathan's getting ready to have a seizure, he's got his nose to him, and he knows, so he's letting us know, and it's, it's getting better and better and more confidence. But we have a monitoring system because Sam and I used to take turns sleeping on a trundle bed in his room because most of his seizures, he's had, I wrote this down, 144, but it's over that now since I wrote that number.
And a lot of them at night is what you're saying?
Well, the first couple years, they were almost exclusively at night. And so we would sleep. So we have.
What do you mean 144? What time period?
In his whole experience with history.
Since 2020, did you say 2020?
Since 2020.
Yeah.
And in the early
that
years
you know of?
that we know of.
Okay.
And then that first year he had a 5-month, the first 2 years, he had an 8-month break and a 5-month break. But then as we get into talk about more about medication, I can kind of explain why he has more, but yeah, we have a monitoring system. So when he leaves his bed or falls out of it because of a seizure, we get a phone call. If there's excessive motion in his room, we get a phone call. Now we have Bo, who's with him all the time. And then we have a second camera called a Sammy camera. But we changed to the monitoring because we had this Sammy camera, but it would wake us up every time. And, the monitoring people, they're looking at 70 different alerts throughout the night. So they're analyzing and, do we need to call? Did it stop? This type of thing. But we started on them because even sleeping in the trundle next to him, I slept through till almost the end of a seizure. Yeah. And it's just, we can't do that. I was so exhausted. Like, if I'm sleeping right next to him.
And if they're sleeping, there's no because there's always a crash when Zachary has a seizure because he's hit his head on something.
Yeah.
But if he was asleep, I don't know that I would wake up.
Not unless he's, not unless he has catapulted himself out of bed, and you hear him. I remember one time we were called, he's out of bed. So we went looking for him and are like, where is he? We can't find him. He had fallen on the other side of his bed and was seizing on the floor. Yeah. And so, that's
terrifying.
These are things. So, so you think, well, why, we've been talking about meds, but Nathan's seizures have not been controlled by meds.
Yeah. And that's awful. Yeah.
And so, we've tried some different things. We're working, he went on one and the amount of seizures he had increased. And that's when you really have to be that parent advocate, because we went to the adult side and we thought, well, we're going to go, to the bigger cities and, get a better doctor, boy, did we learn, because first thing we did when we walked into this adult neurology clinic, we walked in and the doctor said, I can't cure his autism. And my husband and I looked at each other and he said, we're not here for autism. He says, well, I can't cure it. And I'm like, well, it's okay. We're not, if it could be cured, if we could have done something, that's not what we're here for.
The whole world would know if there was a cure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I said, we just need somebody to manage his epilepsy. He's having seizures and he's had an increase. So we're here to talk about next steps. And so it took us about 15 minutes to convince him we were not there for autism. And then he put him on a medication and I called him a few days later. I'm like, okay, now he's having one every other day. Yeah. And we're increasing. And so he said, well, he's just not on enough. So he wanted to increase it. So I called the Springfield neurology office and I said, I've got to get in. And there was a doctor that said, okay, I'll see them on my lunch break. And we came in and he said, we're getting him off this as fast as we can. We can't just stop.
Right.
That's dangerous. Exactly. So we weaned him off that as we were putting him on another medication. Now, looking back and over the years and the charting and the graphing we've done about all the seizures, thanks, Dad, we realized that, we're seeing some things that maybe it's the medication. So we're working with some things on that. And Mary, you asked, what would you tell a family that this is new? When you guys read, I don't know if you guys read, and when you were studying, they said, well, when you find out you have epilepsy, you got to find out what kind, and you got to do all this stuff. And we would go to the doctors here, and they're like, they just wanted to talk meds,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Oh,
And
yes. Yeah.
So this last November, I went to Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disneyland. And it was so wonderful. And I learned so much because they said, there's a lot of information and understanding and knowing why. Sometimes you don't get that answer,
No.
Right.
but you got to look, you got to try.
Yeah.
And they talked about once you're on your third med seizure, you need to med seizure fail. You need to get to a level 4 epilepsy center, because every time I went into these appointments, I'd say, I don't know enough.
Mhm.
I'm reading things and it's saying you need to find out this. I said, I need to know more. And I would just get met with, well, let's just, if you're still worried, we'll just increase his meds. I'm like, no, every time we increase, he has more seizures.
I just think they don't know. I mean,
And-
they just don't know anything.
Yeah, and they didn't
Right.
know. So that's what I would say. When you go local, if you're hitting your third med, you need to start looking at and inquiring about, how do I get to a level 4 epilepsy center? Is there one in my state? If there's not one in your state, or it's not working for you, you can petition your insurance to be, if there's not somebody that can adequately
makes
serve you
sense.
in your state, then they can pick that up. And usually who you're looking at can help you with that process, whatever clinic.
Well, that's good advice.
So
It is
yeah,
good advice.
I learned that at this conference.
Yeah.
So I would say, one, go to a conference like that, learn, because I was depending solely on the information that I was being given. And it was just incredible, the amount of information that I learned and the support, and they did talk about medication. Is the medication worth a change in personality? They talked about those things.
Right.
Mm.
And in Nathan's case, where he's crashing into bookcases and having, one, we were getting down to, or having one about every 5 to 7 days, this tonic-clonic grand mal seizure, and it was dangerous.
Right.
Would that be a consideration? Probably, but if he's having one every couple months, is that that's a different, that's a different question.
Do you think Disney still does that once a year?
Yeah, they do it
They
once a
do?
year. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. A trip for Eric.
Good reason to go to
and buy.
Disney.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Nathan came with us. So Darren and I went to the conference, and Nicole flew out and took Nathan through Disneyland, and it was an amazing bonding experience for them. It was incredible. They'd send us pictures all day long. He was so happy. And just the information we got, because there's not just medication. If you're having med fails and you go to that level 4 and you start to talk about, is there a surgery? And just because you go to level 4 doesn't mean that I'm there as a surgery consultation, but that's kind of what they put it as, because they want to say, what are all your options? From the conference, we learned that the things we know about Nathan, he probably wouldn't be even a candidate, for a surgery.
Yeah.
So, but just the more information, knowing. So does it make that money we spent on Mr. Bo worth it? Absolutely.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bo's the dog.
Yes.
Thank you, Tara.
And he's awesome.
Yes.
Dawn.
Yeah. What type of surgery would you do on some cases of epilepsy?
Oh, they
I've
kind of
seen
went
them
over
on the news, but I couldn't tell you what they're
There's
called.
like insert. There's different kinds of, maybe cutting something.
stuff out.
So cutting things, inserting.
It's weird.
So there's and then there's like VNS, but I don't know if that's considered surgery. You put like a stimulation on the brain and different things like that. So there are a lot of options, but getting to level 4 or epilepsy center to help you make these, decisions. And that's the thing, and that's not to be so down on our doctors. That are local. They're not, that's not their job. There are others. And we would just hope that when somebody is having med failures, that they get referred.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, go ahead.
Does
Dawn.
anybody wear any type of alert jewelry or?
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah, Eric has a necklace, and he wore it to somebody too. He had it with him in Africa on that trip, but he doesn't like jewelry, so he doesn't wear it. He doesn't like to have anything on him.
Neither
But-
does Zachary.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, he
would-
doesn't wear anything, but I don't think he
Yeah,
would if
mine
we
is-
tried.
Yeah, I would like Nathan to, but yeah, he wouldn't leave it on. And Nathan and like Zach, they will always be with staff or a family member.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
if you
I wish he would, but
Yeah.
just if they're, car accident, I mean,
Yeah.
anything, that would be good.
Little flag, yeah.
can epilepsy families register with 911 their house or anything's in?
I think with the 911, I think it just that you can look up 911 registry, and I think it depends on your county or city if they actually have the registry program.
Okay.
So you can contact them, maybe your local police department or your 911. I wouldn't call 911 and ask them if they have a registry. Like, how to get a hold of 911 outside of
The non-emergency number.
Yes, a podcast told me to call you. It's called Navigating Adult Autism.
You should listen. But anyway. Oh, gosh.
That's funny.
Well, this was great information. Epilepsy and autism. So thank you, moms, for sharing your stories. Appreciate it.
One last question.
Yes, of course.
What advice would you have for a bystander if
Well, while they're thinking, I got to tell you this fabulous story of a bystander, which, he's right there on my note. Nathan had, he's had a number in different stores. They teased at one of our Walmarts that they alert everybody when we walk in. I don't know if it's true or not. It could be because they're there pretty quick.
Yeah.
But we were at a grocery store, one of our local Hy-Vees, and Nathan started to have a seizure. Now, have any of you seen Mrs. Doubtfire? Right, the scene where he's choking and it's like Mrs. Doubtfire runs, "Help is on the way, dear." Right? I tell you, before Nathan hit the door, there was this young man working there. Amazing. I mean, he was "Help is on the way." He was flying, and he made it before Nathan hit the ground and helped me lower him down. I was like, and afterwards he told me his name, but there's so emotion and the adrenaline's going so high that I couldn't remember his name. But when they called and just did a check, I said, "Make sure you find this."
Exactly.
I should have done more, but when you're living day to day, it's hard. But it was so, it was just amazing. And mostly, for people, seeing, offering support, because sometimes you can use somebody to time, you can use somebody to watch another kid, you can use somebody to watch your purse if it's sitting in the car. I've started wearing a backpack, so I don't have to, so I can have hands free, but be there, because it can turn into a medical emergency quick, helping to, when you're with Nate, he's kind of my size, doesn't weigh as much as me, but he's kind of my size. And for me to get him down to the ground is hard.
Well, I was going to say, even carrying it, like after, the whole rest and whatever, like if you're in a store, he would need to be back. You'd need help getting him back into a vehicle or whatever the case may be.
Standing up too. Or,
and usually, so like stores, usually we end up having people come to help that are workers, and they usually, Carolyn's car or wheelchair, whatever they have available. But we have to let him lie there for a while, otherwise he vomits if we get him up too quick. But putting things back on the shelves, just people being kind and courteous, and we've had just amazing. And I know one he had, and he fell over, and of course his leg's sticking up, and he's like kicking all the cake mixes off the shelf. And this family walked by, and they went past us, and they said it took them a second to process, and they came back, and they're like running to to come and help. They're like, "Sorry, we just walked
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The kind thing would not to be just walk by like there's nothing going on and ignore, because we get lots of autism ignoring.
Right.
They ignore us many times in a store because of the autism, but the kind thing is right to reach out kindly to.
do you need help?
Yeah.
Or what
Is
can I
there
do?
anything?
Yeah.
Right. Because I've had people dig in my purse for the meds. I've had people hold his head. I've had,
That's
people.
nice though, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, they just, the call for help, and do those type of things, and put things back on the shelf, or, collect our belongings if they got that thrown.
We had a young man, he was cleaning the windows. We do a quarterly window clean at our house. I don't do it. A company does. And they always send the kindest young men out to clean the windows. And Zachary had a seizure while he was inside cleaning the windows. And he was probably Zachary's age. I mean, early 20s, I would say. And he was very kind. And he helped me. Like he just stayed with me. He did not clean the windows. He just stayed with me while I was with Zachary. And then quite a bit after that, when we did move him to rest, he helped me with that too. Cause I can't move Zachary's.
No.
I mean, he's a grown man. So, that was really kind. And I think he was totally freaked out by the whole thing. Like I totally get it cause it freaks me out too. But in the end, I did call, and I mean, he was so gracious when he left. I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you. Like, I don't know what to say to you. But we sent him a card and everything after that. And I just thought, what a kind young man. I mean, it made me feel good about bystanders and stuff that they're willing to help and just be kind.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories. Epilepsy and autism. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns from anybody? Nope. We're going to wrap it up. Tara, where can they find us?
Okay, you can hear us on Apple or Spotify under Navigating Adult Autism Podcast, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and now YouTube under Navigating Adult Autism Podcast. And you can contact us at moms@navigatingadultautism.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.